Hello. Happy Friday. Yeah. Say hey in chat if you're here. I'm still getting stuff sorted. What did I do with my question mark? I don't know. I lost a browser window. Live streaming question mark? Oh, I minimized it. Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure it was going. But yeah, hey CB Jammo, good to see you. Okay, so what got done today? It was an interesting day. Let me pull up the Ergot repo, and I can talk about what I did today, because it was another good day of getting stuff done and figuring out things that were sort of broken or realizing some things that need to be fixed next. So let's go over that. Let's see. Got this merged. This was... Okay, I think maybe this one Alexandra did yesterday. We might have done that before the stream this morning. But that was cool. And then I made some tweaks because I noticed that there are a couple things. This is also the first PR that didn't get merged by me, so that's an exciting milestone. I'm pretty excited about that. But this is mostly just using, since we're only on standard library here, we use heap allocated types, so we're not using const generics. We just take like a depth parameter, and then we use it, which makes sense if we're on desktop. So that was a cool little one. Then a couple PRs back, Numinex helped rename the feature from Stud to Tokyo Stud because it made it more clear that like the TCP connections and stuff that we have going on, it's not like we're not hard-coded to Tokyo. We just only happen to have a Tokyo TCP socket implementation right now. But we completely renamed everything to Tokyo Stud, and there's actually quite a few things that... Hey, Alexandra. Yeah, you can press the merge button. You're the first person other than me to push the merge button. That's exciting. I'm pumped about that. So basically I just made, I moved some of this back, and then for the things that don't actually touch Tokyo, but they do touch Stud, because like they have an allocator or whatever, I moved those back to the Stud feature, and then Tokyo Stud activates the Stud feature. So like from the outside world, if you're activating the Tokyo Stud feature, you don't notice a difference. But it means it bothered me in a couple places where I'm like, this has nothing to do with Tokyo, and so I just made a normal Stud feature again. But it's a better, I like this better now because it's more clear. So we could now have a like small Stud feature, for example, where all the same dependencies get activated, but we only activate smalls TCP sockets when we want that. So I think that's a fun way of doing things. And eventually, like, I have an open issue or a discussion for it'd be cool to be able to do stuff blocking, for example, and use convars instead of async stuff, because I know there's some people that don't always love async for everything, and I think Ergot could be used non-async. On embedded, it'd have to be a little more poly, but I don't know. At least on desktop, you could use convar and stuff. What else we got? So then the big like actual functional thing that I did today was adding device discovery. So this is kind of like the first step towards being able to... Let me just run this. So this doesn't like discover capabilities or anything like that, but this is basically just like a super fancy ping, where instead of just like ping, yes, this device exists, we have device info. I'm looking for where I define device info. This is going to be in like the well-known. Yeah, so you've got name, description, and unique ID. Let me make this a little bit bigger, as always. But I can run the demo. So let me find some console windows. So I've got my Ergot router here, and I've got an Ergot client, and I've got another Ergot client. So let's bump this up. You can see that I was doing this recently. bump the size up on this, and let's move this there, and let's bump the size on this, and let's move this back over here. And so now I'm in router, I'm on main. So if I do Rust log, let's not do trace, let's do info level on this router. Ergot router does not contain. Oh, this is because I'm doing cargo test. Cargo run release. And so we can see that it's added a device record. It actually discovered itself. So it found address 000, info, own device info, Ergot router, and a central router, and its unique ID is 2025, which is actually like its TCP/IP port ID. But if I now go over here and I run a client, it goes boop boop, and we can see that it's getting requests. It actually pings like twice every second. It's also sending some other stuff, but we can see this important thing. Oh goodness, stop scrolling. We can see that it added an Ergot client, which is an Ergot client device, and its unique ID is 51396, which is the TCP socket that it's connected in. So if I do another router, we can see that I get this. And we can see that it's on port 51400. And then if I close one of these, we can see that it closed, and we removed that. So like twice a second, we're just pinging all the devices that we can find, and then it has like a hash set, and it remembers what it found and what it lost. So yeah, that's this demo working. So yeah, that's what this PR does. I found some interesting stuff along the way. Like, for example, some stuff with sockets. The Edge router didn't handle broadcast topic messages right. So let me go and see if I can find that. So direct router actually didn't do anything with broadcast messages before. So it was just, it would actually go, I'm going to find a destination for this. Oh, this, I'm not going to pay attention that this is a broadcast message, so I'm just going to decide that I don't want to forward this on. So I was very confused for a little bit, because the actual, like, interrogate for, like, tell me about yourself is, it's a broadcast message. So basically, yeah, it wasn't right. I'm probably going to find more stuff. I opened up an issue because I went, hey, it's probably really time to do user interface and protocol testing. Luckily, in this direction, I think it's actually going to be fair, famous last words, but I think it's going to be fairly reasonable to test Ergot, because the core net stack is all blocking and more or less stateless. So what we can do is we can have a test or like a mock profile and some test or mock sockets, which means we can just test feeding data in and customize the sockets that we have and things like that, and have fairly deterministic tests, I think. I think should be fairly reasonable. And then the same for profiles. Profiles we should be able to instrument without a net stack at all, just feeding them data in, because profiles tend to be a little stateful, but we can just directly touch them through the profile interface, which should be all that we need. And then we can find things like differences between a router profile and a edge device profile, which probably would have caught like, hey, do you handle broadcast messages correctly? No, you sure don't. So now it's probably about time for that, because I don't know how someone other than me would have debugged that. And even when I debugged it, it was going through and adding a bunch of log messages in a bunch of places. And so we probably need to get better at that. So that's probably what I'm going to do next before I do more discovery stuff, is actually like at least set up the basics for this so that someone else has a chance to go in and flesh out those tests, or like as I bump into weird cases, at least the infrastructure for testing is there already. Yeah. So that's one aspect of it. I also found out that there's probably at least one other places where this is one of those things where it hasn't really showed up because we don't have bridging yet, but there are some places in the routing where we tweak the header and the send raw interface passes both a raw header and the header. And actually, it probably shouldn't do that because right now there's actually some cases where we modify the header. Like for broadcast messages, we update the destination on each hop and we update the TTL and stuff like that, but we don't reserialize the header raw. So I will probably need to change this so that you get something like an enum where if the header is unchanged, it'll give you the raw, but if you decide to modify the header, you give it that and it will reserialize this. The reason that I have the header raw is because you can avoid reserializing in some cases because you can just go, well, I'm just going to copy the header and I'm going to copy the data, but that only works if we don't update any fields, and possibly in all cases, because I think we update the TTL. I don't know if we only update the TTL for broadcast messages, but we might. This is stuff that will start showing up in tests, and then I'll be able to go back and look at those tests. So right now I've just added a note that, hey, it's wrong, and it's actually, like, it was always wrong in direct edge, but it's fine because every direct edge only has one interface. Routers, it could be wrong. I'd have to look. It might be doing wrong things for routers right now. But yeah, we'll figure it out. This is what testing will be good for. So yeah, this is doing stuff. The other fun thing that I realized is, and I wrote this up in chat. I'm not going to go over it too much. I probably should pull it out of chat and put it into a discussion or something like that. There's a fun edge case where, I don't know, it's just because borrowed sockets aren't super fleshed out yet. And so there's a limitation now where owned sockets, well, I don't know. I need to just put this in a discussion or something because I wrote up a whole thing in Matrix chat. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a couple of things of like, there's some intersections of where Ergot's trying to be clever with borrowed versus owned and type punning in postcard schema types and things like that works if you do a serialization and a deserialization hop. So, for example, you can do type punning when you serialize a message and then deserialize it to something different but compatible, like a borrowed stir versus an owned string. But that only works if you actually go over a network link. So if you try and do discovery with type punning locally, it doesn't work because you try and send a borrowed message and a receiving socket that receives owned messages isn't going to like that. I don't really want to explain this out again, and I don't want to just copy and paste it from chat, so I'll probably grab it from chat. Yeah, just so it doesn't get lost. But the answer is, I'm going to have to flesh some of this stuff out. But this is one of those things that I tried and got kind of stuck on before I combined the Ergot and the Ergot base things, and I noticed some of the errors that I was getting when I was trying to fix some of that stuff were the issues that I had with borrowed messages. So I'm hopeful now that I've squished things and gotten the lifetimes figured out a bit more, I might have a better chance of round 2 with borrowed sockets. That's why this ESP Fern PR. So this pull request that's sitting open, this is fan as in like the German remote and not like fern as in a tree. But it's a fun play on words. The goal is to use an ESP32C6 as a remote radio. So if you have like an RP2040 and an ESP32C6 on the same board, you can do, the goal is to do networking remotely. So to use Ergot to like control the external radio and then proxy networking data over it. I can't remember if I've discussed this on stream. This is sort of like the ESP hosted crate, but I want to do it all in Rust and with Ergot as the plumbing. So yeah, we'll see. But it's currently choked up because of borrowed lifetimes. So So we'll take another attempt at this. And it's also got merge conflicts because this is before I squashed everything into one crate. But yeah. Oh, that's funny. Alexandra says that she doesn't have Matrix on her phone, which I wrote up like a whole wall of text for her. So, yeah. Like I said, I'll probably just, Alexandra, I'll go and copy and paste like all this text into a discussion or something like that, because it's good to have somewhere where I can link to it, because it's, I don't know, it's just not great yet, but we'll get there. What else? Oh, and then I went back. I realized when I squashed things together, I lost, like, there used to be Ergot base tests and Ergot tests, and when I moved everything over, I just kind of squashed the old Ergot test, so I have this PR that basically just restores this. Like, they both used to have a folder called Smoke. Now they just have Smoke and Smoke 2. And also some stuff for the log formatting. So this wasn't being tested for a little bit, but basically this got updated. Yeah, that sort of stuff is good to be in discussions. Yeah, I have it as sort of like a, it doesn't quite make it to docs, but it's a little bit more formal. It's at least linkable in discussions. But yeah, I'll figure it out. But overall, going well. I probably could sit down and do the service discovery stuff a little bit now, but I'd rather write the tests soon, because yeah, running into this stuff immediately is not a great feeling. But yeah, other than that, also in the Anacro chat, so that's another Matrix chat, but that's less directly about Ergot and more just kind of like my chill Rust and hardware and whatever stuff chat. I was talking with someone named Corbin for he was asking me some stuff about Postcard RPC, and like, I have some things to report about what I do and don't like about Postcard RPC. And I'm like, yeah, a lot of the stuff you don't like about Postcard RPC, I do differently in Ergot for those exact reasons. So we had a lot of conversation about that. It was a good chat. I think it was a lot of just like, I don't think Corbin's followed the Ergot stuff, which, to be fair, I'm kind of all over the place, so it's very understandable. But it was a good conversation, and asked some questions and things like that. Yeah, the line between conversation, autistic info dump, and docs. Yeah, welcome. This is the stream. And the Matrix rooms, and the GitHub. Yeah, I'm kind of here for that. My hope is to just keep, baiting other people to do the same level of excitement about it. That's my goal by the end of mid-September, or by mid-September, to have other people this excited about it, so that when I go off, my secret plan, which has not been secret because I said it in the first stream, is I got to go off and work on another project for like 12 weeks, and I would be very, I'd be really pumped if Ergot just didn't pause for those 12 weeks. Like, if it kept moving, and I could go like, I'm excited to get back to it. That's what I'm hoping for. Also, I don't know, I'll probably post about this in other places, but I got invited to talk at Rust ChinaConf in Hangzhou, China. So, in mid-September, this will be the last thing that I do before I start my next gig, is I'm going to go to China, and I'm going to talk about Ergot. We'll see how that goes. So we'll see what Ergot looks like in a month, and I just got invited to give a talk, and they wanted a technical one, so I'm gonna give one about Ergot, because that's what I'm technical about right now. Yeah, my secret plan is just nerd sniping people on B-Sky. Yeah, that's exactly. This is like my whole bit. Like, I've been doing this bit for like, it was on Twitter, and then it was on B-Sky, Blue Sky. So yeah, this is my whole bit, is nerd sniping people, or finding people to nerd snipe me so that I get excited about stuff. It's really like a, infinite motion machine. But yeah, I'm gonna talk in China, and then in October I'll be doing a self-directed research podcast recording with Amos at Eurorust in Paris in October. I won't be giving a talk or anything there, although if there's like lightning talks or something, I might try and jump in. For Eurorust for SDR, I don't have a topic planned. For Rust ChinaConf, it's just gonna be vaguely about Ergot. I don't know. We'll see. Probably like a week or two before the conference, I'll just be like, okay, here's where we're at with Ergot. And yeah, Hello. Yeah, I've never been to Hangzhou before. So I'm excited to see it. So if anyone happens to be anywhere close to Hangzhou and you want to meet up and you happen to be in China, let me know. Yeah, SDR is maybe gonna be about Ergot. It's interesting because the Eurorust slot were the organizers were very nice and they gave us 2 30-minute slots. So it's a 2-day conference and we've got the first day I'm gonna be presenting because like SDR's whole bit is that it's like it's really actually it's funny to do it at a conference because the whole theme of SDR is basically like, what if you gave a tech conference talk as a podcast? And it's just like we trade off weeks of I present 1 week and Amos is the audience, and then Amos presents, and then I'm the audience. So it's really like the whole format, and the reason we have slides and shit is because it's just what if a tech conference, but every week. And so it's really actually kind of funny to me that we got invited to give a live version of that at a conference and that we got a 30-minute slot for each of us because it's basically like we're just giving a conference talk. It just happens like that we have a second person on stage, and instead of being like a co-presenter who just like puts their hands in their pockets for the first 15 minutes and then you trade off like halfway through, then we actually like ask questions and we like, you know, interrupt each other and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be interesting. Do I know if the China talk will be recorded? I assume SDR will be. I don't know if it will be. If I find out it's not, I have these little Rode portable mics, and so I might just mic myself up, and I've done this, I think, at some other places, and just like have my own lav and record it. And then I'll have slides and stuff like that. We can glue that back together. At Eurorust, I don't know what my topic will be. There's a good chance it'll be about Ergot. But where I was going with that story is it's 2 30-minute slots, but that's 30 minutes for like the whole talk. And if you've noticed SDR episodes, we're not particularly good at staying under 30 minutes. So Ergot is one of those things that I might like. I could go like all of season 3 of SDR might be about Ergot. Like all of my talks might just be about Ergot. So I might try and find something like more self-contained that's exciting, but like I could give a good bit on it in 20 minutes without having to explain like everything that's going on in Ergot. I can't even keep these streams under 20 minutes a lot of the time. But we'll see. I'll definitely be excited to talk about Ergot. So Alexandra's saying maybe she'll be there at Paris. If you are, let me know. Well, SDR was originally sort of supposed to be under 30 minutes. It immediately, like, we went off the rails immediately. Like the original talk was like, hey, let's do 20, 30 minutes. You know, it'll be like a conference talk. It fell off the rails immediately. Like, and we've never really tried hard to do it other than we're trying not to kill Amanda, who's our editor. And some of these episodes got like hour and 20 minutes this last season. So we've joked about maybe having like a chess timer for like, I don't know, like 20, 25 minutes for the speaker and 5 to 10 minutes for the co-host, and like being able to slap a chess timer back and forth. But yeah. Yeah, we are way too ADHD for under 30 minutes. It's mostly like the limiting is more about like trying to stay vaguely on a topic, because otherwise we could just chat at each other ambiently for hours, which might be interesting, but also, you know, probably harder to follow if you're not really excited about the same things. And CJM is saying, I prefer SDR being long enough to cover the topic rather than clipping to some specific time. Yeah. There's a balance. It's one of those things where, like, the less we prepare, the longer we go. Is it Thomas Paine? If I had had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. It's kind of like that. Like, when you prepare a conference talk, you usually can hit a time limit fairly well and still cover the stuff you want to cover, versus, like, going down, especially when you have someone asking questions, it's very hard to make that timeline. So that's why we take breaks between seasons, mostly to allow Amanda to recover and for us to like recharge the stuff that we're actually excited about rather than hitting that. But yeah. In September, if you're going to be in China, let me know. I'll be there. Assuming my visa goes through. I think it got approved. I have to double check. I have to go pick it up. But should be good. And then Amos and I think Amanda will be at Eurorust in Paris in October. So I'm happy to meet up and chat. I know there's a lot of folks in Europe and stuff like that. And then I think that's it. I don't think I'm going anywhere else this year. I'm not going to be at RustConf in the US. I'm not going to be in New Zealand, unfortunately. Rust Forge is very, very cool, but not able to make it this year. But yeah, I think that's going to be cool. And then I don't know what the plan for next year is, but I haven't really thought past December yet. Like I said, I start a 12-week gig mid-September, so that takes me to the end of December and then end of the year, and we'll see what happens in January. Back on the Ergot topic, have you had any more thoughts about integration with Postcard RPC and or a post station-like tool for Ergot? I don't know. So some people have started asking me, like, hey, what's the plan with Ergot and Postcard RPC? I like the architecture of... I'll tell you, my thoughts are complicated, and don't take this as a forever answer. This is just Friday night answer. I like the architecture of Ergot better than Postcard RPC. It allows you to do a lot of things much simpler. Like, it allows you to do a lot of things much simpler than Postcard RPC allows you to do. The downside is it does more. Like, it has addressing and routing and sockets and things like that, whereas Postcard RPC is like a very nice local maximum of just like one event loop handling things over and over. So it works really good for that niche, or really well for that niche. But like as soon as you want to do other things, like, hey, I want to have one embedded device ping another one, or I want to have like an uplink and a downlink, like a serial port on this side and a USB port on this side. All that stuff's a huge pain in the ass to even try and figure out how to do in Postcard RPC, because I smashed it into the simplest shape that I could. Excuse me. Whereas Ergot has a much more holistic approach to this, and it has sockets, and we already have the ability for embedded devices to be both, clients and servers. We have a demo for that in the RP2040 serial pair, which is just two devices talking to each other. So I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to retrofit that. Today, if you had to choose one to pick for like a serious project, I would still probably suggest Postcard RPC, because it's limited, but what it does well, and it's more widely used, and there's like, I would be surprised if there were bugs there. There might be features that it doesn't do, but I would be surprised if there were bugs. Versus Ergot, like if I bump into bugs, it doesn't surprise me that much. So I would love to have people, I've been saying like, hey, if you have a project that you're doing experimentally, Ergot's great to test out now. Or if you specifically need something that Postcard RPC just can't do, then Ergot's a very good choice for that. I don't know what the long-term plan for Postcard RPC is going to be. Whether I try and reshape it on top of Ergot, whether I just have like a porting guide for it. You definitely can do and there's still some stuff that Ergot can't do that Postcard RPC can do. And some of those features are actually very usable for post station. And that's namely service discovery. So Postcard RPC has a decently good service discovery story of like, hey, you're a device. What can you do? Tell me everything you can do, because there's these giant macros that Postcard RPC uses. So like Postcard RPC has this macro called define dispatch, which it's a trip. But one of the things that it makes you do is you list all of your endpoints and topics in and topics out. And the neat thing about this is it does macro dark magic and prepares like an array of all of the schema types that you could need, which means that when a PC comes and says, tell me about yourself, it can just vomit all of the schema types at once, which is very neat. Yeah. But the answer is Ergot can't do that yet. I have some ideas, and this is kind of what I'm working towards with this discovery stuff. So that's kind of the next thing that I'm going to tackle. The answer is what I think is probably going to be the answer is that I'll add, for any sockets that you have open, those will be queryable, and then I'll probably have a way of like saying, hey, I can send, or I do send these topic messages or whatever, or maybe just like inactive sockets or something like that. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that yet. There's also the option to have like a proc macro for something, sort of like Rocket did. But yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, Alexandria, if you haven't checked out this decal macro is a chonker. I did a whole SDR episode about this. This is like the compile time crimes episode. It does things that are hilarious. The fact that it works makes me giggle. But when it doesn't work, the errors are awful. Like, there's no way to debug this. Like, you have to cargo expand and hope that cargo expand can expand it, and it's awful. It's very clever, but it's way too clever. But this is the only way I could come up with it at the time. So, like, Ergot takes, like, a different approach where it does more things, but each thing that it does is much simpler. Like, it's easier to explain. Yeah. CB Jamo says, Define Dispatch has always just worked for me, but it does terrify me. Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. For sure. CB Jamo asks, PRPC being built on Ergot, have you done any profile to compare the two, especially with respect to memory? No. No. They're different. And, like, you'll find, like, performance-wise, I think you'll find that they're very similar. Postcard RPC, I would expect to have a lower baseline memory usage because it does everything immediate. So, well, I don't know. I shouldn't define it as immediate because I've described Ergot as immediate before. It receives a message. While it's still holding that message, it then processes it. It, like, calls a callback and then gets the response and sends that back. Which means that you only ever really need like enough buffer space for one incoming packet at any given time and one outgoing packet at a given time. But it means that you can't do a lot of other things. Versus when you open sockets in Ergot, if you have a socket that has room for 2 items, it means that you have room for 2 items and you're using that. The flip side of that is that Postcard RPC you need to have like one buffer that's big enough for the largest anything. You can't, well, I don't know. The answer is Ergot does scale very well for exactly what you're doing. Like if you have 5 sockets open at a time and each of them has a depth of whatever, that's just going to live in the tasks that you have those sockets defined in. So it's going to scale very linearly in that regard. I think Postcard RPC could probably, and this is why one of those things of why I'm not entirely convinced that I can just re-implement Postcard RPC over Ergot, because Ergot is different. Basically, the thing that has haunted me so much is that Postcard RPC is like a local maximum. It is, for like the lane that it does, it's about the most efficient way that I could possibly think to do it. Ergot's not far off. And the areas where it is more, it's more because that allows you to be way more flexible in those areas and things like that. But yeah. Alexandra says, this is the dude just do a proc macro already level. Yeah, I suck at proc macros. You could probably do a proc macro. I don't know. If someone wanted to re-implement define dispatch as a proc macro, I'd probably merge it. I just suck at proc macros. And especially, like, I'm a little better now. When I started doing Postcard RPC, I really sucked at them. I'm mid at them now. And also just from, like, a compile time thing, this was fun to see how far I could push it with. It's one of those things where I was like, haha, I'm going to see if I can do it. And then I did it. But then the downside is I did it, and now I have to maintain it. So, I don't know. If someone wants to come and make it like a define dispatch proc macro, hell yeah. I'll probably merge it. You know, there's going to be LTS for Postcard RPC. Like, what happens if Postcard RPC, I just decide that I'm done with it and I'm going to work on Ergot instead? I'm just going to merge it as 1.0, and I'm going to say it's 1.0, and then I'll fix bugs, but, you know, unless someone else comes and works on it. Because it is still, like, there are areas where it will be, if you really specifically need just that, it probably will be slightly like a kilobyte less memory usage or slightly, I don't know, but it's kind of a dead-end design, if that makes sense. It's not a dead end, but, like, it's hard to take it anywhere because it has been like so shaped into that optimized maximum. I haven't dug into Ergot yet. Does it still have the app storage stuff? No. Basically the answer is you get sockets. So you define what you need where you need it. So instead of having to have everything be centralized, you just define sockets in the tasks that you need them. So, like, let me go find an interesting... So like a PWM server or something like this. I spawn 8 so instead of like in Postcard RPC, you might have app storage or like a context or whatever that has your 8 PWM channels in it. In this, I spawn 8 tasks and each of them get 1 PWM output. So this is an endpoint that takes basically like a set PWM request. And it just does a loop. So it gets a message in where it's a float, it clamps it, it turns this into a U16 basically. It calls set duty cycle and it responds with what the time now is. So Ergot is different in Postcard RPC. So instead of having like one crunch together server that does everything and basically does multiplexing like that, you just make sockets everywhere you need them. So here we have 8 tasks that each have their own socket and things get routed to them. And then they can just wait for that message to come in and do it. So it's just a different design. So you actually don't really need like app storage and stuff like that anymore. Well, I guess app storage is different. App storage is like the buffers. There's some stuff like that where I like have these things where you say like, okay, how big are my USB buffers and stuff like that. So you do have one of those, and that's also used for like setting up the USB connection. But like the context structure, which stores the, like in Postcard RPC, you basically have to put all of your resources in one central context struct. Whereas here you can kind of like spread them out however you want. And if you do need to share stuff between like different kinds of tasks, you can just pass it in as like a static reference to you could have like a static cell mutex, whatever, and just share it inside of the handler. Yeah, CBJO says dope. That's feels like a nicer design. Yeah, I think so. It gives you something that feels like desktop sockets, and so you just write async tasks. The whole funny bit about Ergot is I spent so much time telling people not to do message passing and to just use like shared mutexes and stuff. And then Ergot's actually like kind of a kick-ass message passing stack where I could see you even wanting to do like message passing within an embedded application because you can just send messages to things and stuff like that. But I don't know. You probably should still just use like a shared mutex or whatever if you're not doing communication. But if you happen to also be doing communication and you want to do message passing between your device and a server or whatever, you can also do that. But yeah, that's where we're at. I'm hoping to get, like I said, I'm hoping to nerd snipe some people. So come check it out. I have a discussion for like, hey, I'm just trying out Ergot for the first time. So this is that call for experimentation. If you have any like big picture questions or like, hey, I don't know how I would do this. Hey, it seems like there's nothing for this yet. Please ask questions here because I'll answer them probably on stream and stuff like that. Countdown to someone calling Ergot and RTOS starts now. Yeah, I don't know. I have a strong opinion that like messaging can be the backbone of good system design, and I don't think Ergot is the RTOS, but an RTOS is interesting because like an RTOS is like an old C RTOS is usually a couple concepts bolted together. It's like a scheduler, usually some kind of messaging and concurrency primitives. It's a build system. It's a package library a lot of the times. Whereas in Rust, we kind of, it's build your own. So yeah, I don't know. Like you could just do Embassy Sync for a lot of this stuff, but it doesn't help you if you go across the wire. And you could use Postcard RPC, but it doesn't help if you're both a client and a server. But one of my kind of like funny bits that I wanted, it's not really a bit, but like basically anything you can do with Embassy Sync or Tokyo Sync or Maitake Sync, I want you to kind of be able to, I want to have like an equivalent of that for Ergot. So eventually even having like concurrency primitives like, you know, synchronizing some value or things like that, or something like pub sub where you have the latest value of something, I'd have interesting thought for it. Message passing is just always the correct software architecture. It's in the same way that communism is always the right political system. It's like, yeah, it works until you get someone who's really excited about the wrong things. But yeah, I don't know. It's a good architecture, but like the problem with message passing is a lot of times you need to hole punch a lot of stuff. Like my counter example is like if you had a display buffer and you have 720p or 1080p frames, you don't want to be serializing an entire you don't want to have serializing an entire frame buffer and setting it as a message. So you end up needing to hole punch through that, and usually that means having some kind of type where you can pass like a resource. Like in Rust, you might pass a box back and forth. Like that's kind of what IOU ring sort of does. And that's one of the issues that I have is like designing local only sockets. It'd be cool to be able to do like just channel-y things locally. So then like locally you could pass like a box back and forth, like a box buffer back and forth without necessarily serializing and deserializing it. But it's also sort of an anti-pattern where if someone did try and send you a 1080p frame over a serial port, it would be bad. It probably just wouldn't work, but yeah. I do think like terminally pub sub brain is a very reasonable way to design systems. I've had to explain this to people because like I've worked in safety critical stuff where if you have a more like controls theory brain, then pub sub makes a lot more sense where it's much less stateless, or it's much more stateless or less stateful. And you just think of like everything is publishing and receiving, and if you only care about the latest value, it actually looks like a control flow graph, actually. Versus when you have like a more web brain, and you think of like RPC and you think of that. But like this is the reason why the two primitives that Postcard RPC and Ergot have are basically pub sub and RPC, because you could do 90% of everything in one of those two models, but there's always going to be the goofy 10% where like you want something transactional, and you can build something transactional on top of pub sub. It just sucks. And the same way you can like build something pub sub like streamy over RPC, it just sucks. Whereas like the center 80% of things, you could do it either way, but there's going to be 10% that's going to work really well in pub sub and 10% that's going to work really well in RPC. And so like, yeah, Bang Bang controls comes to mind. Yeah, what was it? Bang Bang you'd just call like a hysteresis controller, but yeah, it's a Bang Bang controller. I used that term at a client, and they had to look up what Bang Bang was because they were a lot more web people than control. But yeah, yeah, I do think pub sub is a very good model to default to, but it's all trade-offs. Like there are certain things you just can't do well for it. Like if you want to say like move, and some of it like you can just change your thinking on it, where like if you had something that was like step forward one notch, that doesn't work well in pub sub, especially if you don't have like exactly once guarantees, because if you got echoes or a missed thing, you wouldn't ratchet forward, and there's some inherent state that you're not synchronizing there. You could say, I wish my desired position to be like a stepper, I desire it to be 30 degrees off nominal, but there are some things where like that you have to refactor your thinking of it to say like a desired and actual state. And I've worked with a lot of like robotics or non-robotics control stuff that just everything is screaming, this is what I desire your state to be, and then every device screams back, this is what my actual state is. And that's a very like controls theory brained way of doing a lot of things. And this is how ROS works for a lot of things. And it's a very reasonable way to build a system, because it becomes very stateless, or like you can limit the blast radius of state. But then there's some stuff where it's like, okay, you want to do a firmware update. How do you do that over pub sub? And the answer is you can kind of do it, or you can kind of smash it together, but like sometimes you want transactional actions. But yeah, good call, Evan. Yeah, I definitely, like I said, I think there's a center 80% where you could do it either way. I think you're going to be happier if you're consistent about it. But like, I've seen people try and do transactional stuff over MQTT, and that sucks. And I've also seen people do stream stuff over like normal non-WebSockets REST, and that kind of sucks. And like, you know, that's why I wanted those to be my two primitives of if you have a primitive for streams and if you have a primitive for transactional RPC, that's like, you know, it doesn't cover everything, but if you only had two building blocks, it's a pretty good building blocks to have in my opinion. But yeah, it's been 45 minutes. I'll probably start wrapping up. I gotta do dinner at some point. So any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to go drink the lovely green cold wine in my fridge, and I hope everyone else will have a lovely weekend. But, yeah. I think it's about all I have. I'm excited. We're in a good spot. I think I'm going to hit next week by starting with testing. I think I'm going to at least put the plumbing down for testing. And I'm trying to think. So, I mean, Alexander said ADHD rant time. Yeah, I'm in Central Europe, but a lot of my clients are in North America. So my working day is usually like noon to 8 anyway. So, but yeah, I'm trying to remember if I did a podcast talk about that, like pub sub versus whatever. There's probably an SDR episode. If not, that'd be a good SDR episode for me to do. I might have made slides for it, but, it's probably in one of the postcard RPC. I think I did postcard RPC. There's probably an SDR. I probably just duplicated an SDR rant. But yeah, if you like postcard RPC, check out Ergot. If you don't like postcard RPC, you're probably not gonna like Ergot, or unless it's specifically because some of the stuff that I don't do. Otherwise, I appreciate everyone showing up to chat. I appreciate people showing up to issues. I'm excited to have some more collaborators. I did invite Alexandra and Ficrax to be contributors. Anyone who's merging PRs and they're active in chat, I'll probably invite you. I'd like to get other people. Like, I don't want all of my pull requests to always be self-merged. I got at least one with a review. Hell yeah. I'd like more of those, but that's not reasonable when I have like full time to work on it for the next couple weeks and other people don't. So if I can get a bunch of people to have a couple minutes, that'd be dope. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap up now. Yeah, CJO, definitely give it a try. Come hang out in the Namas room and let me know if you have any questions. I know we've talked about having some of the stuff where I went, I'll figure out how to get a postcard RPC to do it, but I don't know how. And the answer is a lot of times that I just didn't figure out how, and Ergot solves that. So at least some things. It's not uniquely better. Whatever, you get it. Okay, have a good evening. Have a good weekend. I want to wrap up. See you all on Monday. Reminder, I do Monday, Wednesday, Fridays now. I think I'm going to stick with that. This was nice. Having Tuesday and Thursday to do other stuff worked well, so I'm probably going to keep doing that. Okay. Then have a good weekend, everyone. See you on Monday.